Shalom, everybody, and welcome to the Yishai Fleischer Show, broadcasting live from Jerusalem to the world. You're a part of it wherever you are. And shalom and welcome to Beit Midrash Sulam Yaakov here in the heart of Nachlaot, Jerusalem. It's so good to be here in Jerusalem right now. And when I'm in Jerusalem and Nachlaot, I'm also with Rabbi Mike Feuer. Rabbi Mike, shalom and welcome.
Oh, welcome back to the Beit Midrash.
Thank you. You know, I am now a resident of Judea. I'm a Judean.
You've always been a Judean in my heart.
Well, you know, I was a Jerusalemite, which is this cosmopolitan city for a long time.
As well as a popular noodle kugel, Yerushalmi.
Yerushalmi kugel, that's right. It's got its own kugel, that's right. It's got its own kugel.
Not every city has its own kugel.
Yeah. Boy, is Jerusalem the best city in the world, you know? And I can only liken it, I'm just going to say the only other city that I think even
Don't do it. Don't do it.
All right. Well, you know,
the other woman.
But like I was just telling my friend that like there's no other city that has the power, and it's so, you know, I live just a tad away now. I moved to Efrat, a biblical city. I want you to know.
Kibirkat Haaretz.
That's right. I want you to know. I want you to know, Rabbi Mike Feuer, I have never not lived in a non-biblical city. Now, all the cities in the land of Israel are biblical.
That was too many negatives. You've never not lived.
I've always lived in a biblical city.
Thank you.
Yeah. And the biblical city, I lived first in Beit El, which I really learned about the dream of Jacob.
That's as biblical
and
as
the
it
ladder,
gets.
right? And it was so awesome to live there. I really learned, and I also learned, interestingly, the flip side of that. I also learned about Jeroboam, Yeravam ben Nevat, and his alternative, negative.
His alternative narrative.
His alternative narrative. P.S. He tried to block Jews from coming to Jerusalem.
That's right. He tried to bring back the golden calf. It's like digging back to the most sort of evil alternative narrative that really exists.
Right. So there was so. I lived in Beit El. I saw the original narrative, which is Jacob and his dream of the ladder, great vision of the future. And you know how you can test the seismic level of any kind of biblical verse?
How's that?
Okay, this is my test. I see how much the Balaturim has to say on it, right? Sometimes
he is your favorite commentator.
Sometimes it's like drop, but some things like the dream of the ladder was like it's just pages. And this is what it means, and this is what it means, and this is what it means. It has such a significance. Anyway, I lived in Beit El. Then I was lucky enough to live on the Mount of Olives, Zechariah chapter 14, obviously, and just across from the Temple Mount.
Drove by your old place just the other day trying to get out of this town.
Right.
It's been a little bit dicey.
Why? Because of traffic?
Because of the protests. Our brothers in black who've taken to closing the entrances to this city on a regular basis.
You're talking about the ultra-Orthodox Jews?
I am.
You know, I haven't been seeing those protests. What's that been like?
Well, I don't know, because we drove all the way up and over and around the Mount of Olives in order to get through. My wife had to actually get off a bus and walk for a half hour just to get through the protest to get to the other side in order to get to Ma'ale Adumim.
There is, by the way, a secret road through the Mount of Olives, down through Atur and Isawiya, and onto the road that leads to Ma'ale Adumim. There is a secret way.
I know that, but yeah. I was with our good friend Zev Orenstein, who knows the roads back there fairly well.
Okay.
Plus Waze.
Waze tells you.
You know, Waze has no political affiliation.
Right. Waze will tell you. I'll never forget how I was with Shmuley Boteach and a bunch of his kids typing in Auschwitz into Waze, trying to get home, trying to find a way to the death camps there so he can tour me around. Waze is wild. Anyway, I lived in Yerushalayim, and now I live at Efrat, which is really the sister city, the connected city to Bethlehem. Efrat itself, mentioned in the Bible. The tomb of Rachel is there, and King David is there. I wanted to tell you something. You know, Shemona Esrei, the 18 benedictions prayer, has many different blessings. And I know
19 of them.
18 and 19 really, right? I have been finding that in Efrat, the blessing that kind of seismically shines or like glows a little bit is et tzemach David avdecha tatzmiach, like hasten the growth of the plant of David, the
sprout
of David.
Just you wait until the hills around there turn green, which please God will be sooner rather than later.
Right.
It's a phenomenal experience. I love those hills.
Well, yeah, I'm colorblind, and when my wife doubts how colorblind I am, I go to the internet and I show her those tests. Mm-hmm. You could take the colorblind test, and she starts to cry. She realizes how bad colorblind is.
I didn't actually realize you were.
Yeah, very. Yeah.
So when the hills turn red, then?
It just doesn't make that kind of impression on me. You know what I mean? It doesn't make the same kind of impression. A colorblind person does not appreciate colors in the same way. That's basically it. Think of it that way. But anyway, now I'm living in Efrat, and just to come back today to Jerusalem, when you told me that we could record today, and I had many other errands to run, as we call in Hebrew, sidurim, right? Errands. Just to come back to Yerushalayim, Efrat is awesome. I love it. But to come back to the holy and great city, and not only is it holy, but it's also a great metropolis, great cosmopolitan city, multicultural, to really everything cultural, multi-religious, multi-everything. Just a lot of fun. So it's great to be back here. And that reminds me of our Torah portion, which is one of my favorite names, which is Lech Lecha. Right? God says to Avram, he's not yet Avraham, leave off the last H. He's still Abram. He says to him, Lech Lecha, go hither.
Go you.
Go you.
Go you.
Go you. GoYou.com.
Well, this could be your future.
Okay.
I mean, it's a powerful call because he's giving him an invitation to go elsewhere with a recognition that a true journey is also a journey into self. Right? That Avram, who leaves Ur Kasdim, is told to leave everything he knows, his entire context, and that's the necessary step to becoming who he will be. And so his going forth is a going into himself as well. And that's one of the most important, to me, frames of this entire parsha.
Right. So he says to him, go to yourself. But what he's telling him is uproot yourself, really.
You can't go to yourself as long as you are embedded in the context within which you formed.
But wasn't I myself where I was?
Of course, I'm going to get into some existential discussion of what makes you you, but I can tell you as an educator that the greatest barrier to learning is believing that you already know. As is true, the greatest barrier to growth is the belief that you've already arrived. And so God says to Avram, I've got big plans for you. I'm going to make you a great nation. You're going to be a blessing for the whole world. But in order to do that, you have to step out of what you know.
I think that I remember now that you tell us every year when we learn about Esav, that he came out a complete man, that he was a done deal.
That's right.
And Abraham here he's old, and he's being told to reinvent himself.
And he does it. He does it in a fantastic way. And, there's a beautiful piece that to me is always central to this parsha as well, is that the Ramban, Nachmanides, great 13th century commentator, asks, why don't we know anything about Avram before he gets such a phenomenal demand and an incredible promise? Right? God asks him to leave everything he knows and then promises him basically the world, make you a great nation, I'm going to bless you and make you great, and you will be a blessing. So we don't know anything about him. So a Hasidic answer from the Sfas Emes, he says, no, that itself is his greatness. He says in the name of the Zohar that God is actually saying Lech Lecha at all times to all people. And the greatness of Abraham is that he heard it. Right? And that's like a question that each of us should hold at the beginning of this parsha. Do we hear that? Do you hear that call to step out from what we know and to become the self that we could be? Right? Every year at this time, I try to sit with that and really ask. It's a very important question.
The words themselves, Lech Lecha, are twin words. They're spelled exactly the same way because we have vowelization. So you can have two exact same spelling words sound different, but they're kind of like sister words, and they're like go, and then it's to yourself. Go, but you're actually coming back. And also, the gematria really of Lech Lecha is 50 and 50. You immediately get the sense of the 5 and 5 of the 10 Commandments. Like I'm taking you on a walk. This journey is going to end at the receiving of Torah at Mount Sinai.
I mean, if you're going to go with the gematria, you also get the 5 and 5 that are added to the names of Avraham and Sarah by the end of the parsha.
Right.
Like we see the sort of fruition of this journey when at the end of the parsha their names are changed from Avram to Avraham. That letter Hey has a numeric value of 5. And Sarai becomes Sarah. And so you see that it's already, and of course, what is the ultimate result of that? Yitzhak. Right, is the sort of hemshech dorot, the continuation of the generations that shows that what's begun here is a story that we're still living today. It's not one great person, right? The greatness of Abraham is not in his individuality. It's in the promise God makes to him that he will be a great nation. And so it's critical that by the end of the story it's begun to open up into the generations.
So I may have not mentioned that we are on the Land of Israel network, and I want to tell you that I was at the farm, Ari and Jeremy's amazing farm out at Ibea Nachal this week. Blew my mind.
I like to call it the headquarters.
The headquarters. I like the headquarters. That's right. The headquarters. And the next verse, and we're back in the book of Genesis,
Woo!
Torah portion of Lech Lecha. It's chapter 12 and onwards. And there's a great line there. It says, "V'avarcha mevarechecha." I will bless those who bless you. U'mekalelecha aor. I will curse those who curse you. V'nivrachu becha kol mishpechot ha'adama. All the families of the earth will be blessed through you. And I saw there at the headquarters, I saw Germans and Arabs, i.e. people that you could identify if you so wanted to with Nazis and with the jihad, working together to build up this Jewish town in the desert, this Jewish headquarters. And and Jeremy pointed that out to me. And it was just a beautiful thing. And just this phrase, if you love Israel, you will be blessed. If you bless Israel, you'll be blessed. If you curse Israel, you will be cursed. You'll be cursed. I'm going to ask you, Rabbi Mike Feuer, I'm going to ask you a asterisk type question. And you could pass on this, okay? Because I just have a weird question to ask, and I don't know how to say it right, which is, this text that we're reading, this is the foundational text of our life.
Sure.
But it's almost been given to us like we landed and here's a script. It's like, why this script? We know that this is the script, but it's like...
Couldn't it have been otherwise?
And also, did Avram know that a script was being written through him about his life? And like, I just mean to say, like, wow, this is the Bible. We're living it. We're reading it. This is our family. It's written about our family in our language. And we've been carrying around this book. But this is the book. Every phrase here is measured by God to be the perfect phrase. And it's like, there's something about it which you're like, was there no other options? Is this the DNA of the world, or could it have looked different? Could there have been a different word popped in here or something like that?
So your question is, did it have to be this way?
Yeah, kind of, or like, do you understand the tmiha, the wonderment that I feel when I'm like, well, this is the book, this is the text.
I get it, because what I hear you asking is that if you're going to take the infinite and put it into the finite, is this the only form it could take?
Yep.
Right. So before I answer that, I want to answer your other question first, which is that Avram didn't know that he was part of a story. He was living his life as an individual. That's why his first great complaint to God, after all the sort of trials and tribulations and victories he has in the first part of the parsha, is what? What does he say to God? What's his complaint?
That I don't have seed.
I don't have children.
Right.
And God says to him what? You don't know who you are. He says, come on outside. I'm going to show you something. He shows him the stars. And then in the Midrash, in the words of our sages, right, God says, let go of your astronomy, your ability to see what is and think that what is dictates what will be. That's what the astronomers do. That's what the stargazers, the astrologers, actually, I should say more accurately. Because I'll just change your name and you'll be someone completely different. And there is a story, and you can show, I think, repeatedly through Avraham's life that God is constantly trying to point out to him that there is a story he's part of, and Avram is more or less open to it. The other great place that we'll speak about next week is Brit Ben B'Tarim, right, the covenant between the pieces, when God gives him a preview of what's coming in the coming chapters.
Right.
So why do I point that out in context of your real question? Is because the way in which the infinite comes down to a finite form is a powerful and dangerous dynamic. Because that question of it couldn't have been some other way usually leads to either fundamentalism or heresy. No, it could not have been any other way. It could not have been any other way. And then you are bound to the mechanics of the text. Right? Or nihilism in her head. No, well, listen, it was this way. It could have been that way. Therefore, it's meaningless. What you have to focus on is the preciousness of what you have in your hands.
Right.
Which is, I don't know, it could have been another way. But this is the way it is.
Right. What you're saying, by the way, is it's also a logical conclusion. A person who thinks deeply about that comes to that conclusion that you're saying. It's a kind of logical conclusion. Well, this is his will. And this is...
And it's the story he's given to us. right? And could it have been another way? I think the greatest proof that there's more to this story than meets the eye is the fact that the sages engage it and immediately begin to change it, evolve it, birth it into their lives. And that's what we've done. You spoke about the Baal Turim earlier. In the end, you could measure the seismic value of a verse according to the quantity that the Baal Turim comments on. But you know what you're really measuring? Where it strikes him.
Right.
Because this text is written in a way in which its primary goal is to teach us about ourselves.
Well, remember, the Baal Turim is also bringing together the Masoret,
Yes, but there's no lack of Masorah on every single verse.
That's right. And that's another book called the Torah Shlema by Rav Kasher,
right,
with every midrash written on every verse. Speaking of verses that are brought into life, it says here a great verse that I like so much. Where is it? The one that says Vayitzu. Here it is. Right here it is. It says that Avram took Sarai, his wife, Lot, his nephew, all of their possessions, and all of the souls that they made, because they were obviously in what my Christian friends would call a ministry.
Yes,
they ministered, right? That they made in Haran because they had set up a ministry, and it says Vayitzu lalechet arza Knaan vayavo'u arza Knaan. They left to go to the land of Canaan, and they came to the land of Canaan. This is what I always tell people. This is Aliah.
It's a two-step process.
It's a two-step process. One is to extricate yourself, especially from America. It's to extricate. Could be if you're getting booted out of Nazi Germany or the Soviet Union, or
you've been spit out. You don't have to extricate.
Yeah, you don't have to do much. And then you just kind of like meld into whatever, you get thrown against the wall, you try to stick. When you're living in a Haran, which is embracing, and maybe too much so, hedonistically or materialistically, in other ways, embracing you got to extricate yourself from that. Or maybe you have to extricate yourself from the mikveh that you built, the school that you built, and a million things. Vayitzu, they left. They decided to take that step out. That's one. They pulled, as my sister says, to break out of the gravitational pull of America. And then they came and they matriculated. They became adjusted. They came to the land of Canaan. And the word Canaan, the Hasidim always say, comes from the word hachna'ah, which means to bow, sublimate
or
yourself.
That's what I'm looking for. Not subject, but submit.
Submit.
Yeah.
Submit yourself. And then he comes to Alon Moreh, which is Shechem. And guess where I'm going this Shabbos? That's right. You guessed it. You guessed it. A lot of people go to Parshat Lech Lecha, to Alon Moreh, to Shechem for Shabbos, next to Shechem. And I'm going to be at my good friend Natan Shachar's house. And he made Aliah. He made Aliah from America. He listened to my show and other shows. He made Aliah from America and came to live in Alon Moreh.
That's a big jump.
They were like, this is the first Oled that has come straight here in like 30 years. They went to the airport. They greeted him. They brought him to the house. By the time he came to his house, the fridge was stacked. They embraced him. They danced around circles outside of his house as he came from New York City to Alon Moreh.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it is amazing. Yeah. It is really amazing. And so Avraham comes to Alon Moreh, and God says to him, he does his first, builds his first altar there. God says to him, walk around the land, like haloch v'nasah negba, like go,
see it with your feet,
right, and kind of gain ownership of it, get a sense of it. But it doesn't always work out, does it, in the land of Israel?
No, sometimes things can be hungry.
Yeah, what happens?
Well, sometimes the financial end of things can be a difficulty.
That's right. The money.
Hashem,
please give us the money.
Amen.
We need the money. And by the way, if you're out there with the money, send over the money. Let's go.
Don't be shy in sharing.
Send it over. Send it for Torah. Send it for building.
But it's important that this is a test, Abraham. I mean, it's an incredible thing that he has absolute certainty heard the voice of God saying, leave everything you know and go to this place. And a person who's operating under a simplistic relationship with God might think, okay, listen to God, so everything's going to work out. God's now pointing out to him, no, what are you, a child? That's not how life works. You did the right thing because it was the right thing. That doesn't mean that it's going to work out in the short term. That's what it means to be part of a story. It'll work out in the long term. right? And our good friend Zev likes to say.
What is he learning to fail? He's learning to fail.
No, he's learning the great moral that our good friend Zev likes to say, which if you give the Jews 10 years, 20 years, could look a little grim. You give us 1,000, it's going to be great. Right? So he has to know he's in it for the long run.
Zev's got great. He's
polished his lines because he talks to all those famous people.
Yeah, that's right. He doesn't. And he also taught me a great lesson about dealing with reporters. He's like, dealing with reporters is like being in a casino. The longer you're there, the more you're going to lose.
Yeah. So true.
So you got to keep it tight.
Yeah.
I'm willing to lose this amount of time. Then
let's
I got
have a little fun. I'm out of here.
That's right. I got to keep my watch on me. They pump in oxygen, take out the clocks out there.
Yeah, I know.
Don't show you the light of day. All right. By the way, the New York Times was recently again in Hebron.
They deliver all the way there? Sorry.
I got a relationship with the New York Times. I got
Me
this
too.
thing. Yeah.
I'm actually have a blood relationship
That's
with the New
right.
York Times.
That's right. I'm like, it's like a, this just for 1 second. This reminds me of this whole Harvey Weinstein thing.
Ooh.
I've been very fascinated by this because in part it's a Jewish story. It's a Jewish town. This guy's Harvey Weinstein, the Jew.
He's for sure.
And this disease of womanizing / I don't think he's even a womanizer. I think there's something
An abusive predator.
right / mentally warped in some way.
Well, I think a predator is something that's stepped out of the normative behavior.
Well, I mean, a predator, right? I guess a human being. I guess so. Yeah, it just has been interesting to me because it is a Jewish story in part, and I think there's a subtext there about where Jews could go when they go wrong.
Well, Jews are just like everyone else, only more so.
Only more so. That's right. Exactly.
So in this case, unfortunately.
So speaking of Harvey Weinstein, lahavdil elef alfei avdalot, but he's still a son of Israel. Sarah was a very beautiful girl, very beautiful woman, and it was Pharaoh and his servants who just kind of whisked her away.
That is material for the palace.
Right. Yeah, that's a good-looking table. It's a good-looking woman. Just whisk her away, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. That's the way it was in the ancient world.
Right. I guess not only in the ancient world. And there he is. She's his beloved wife is taken away from her. TNT Turner Classics made a great Abraham movie. Very long, very good.
You really do know every biblical movie,
yeah,
don't you?
I love biblical movies. And they did a great job at showing, how upset Avram was about the loss of his beloved wife. And basically what happens is that Pharaoh gets very ill, and somehow he learns that this is indeed Abraham's wife. He gives him back his wife, and he gives him like gifts with it, and he kind of sends him away. And he comes
Don't hang
back.
around here no more.
So what do we learn about this? What are we learning about Avram here? That what was the lesson learned here?
Listen, there are a lot of tough stories in Avram's life.
Right.
And before we even get into what the specific lesson is, it's always important to remember. And as we set the intention last year for digging deeper into the nature of the avot of the forefathers and what they can teach us, I think it's worth it to keep in mind that there is no pretense at perfection in any of these stories. And that's critical.
Some people would take offense at what you're saying. Some
That's
people
fine.
Say,
I've said far more offensive things.
Right. Some people would say,
I'll double down on it. Not only is there no pretense at perfection, there is a rejection of the notion that perfection is part of the human story. Right? That what it is to be human is to work on oneself, to know one's flaws, to grow and change toward that which you could be. But as my Rebbe has always said to me, this illusion people have that they're not fulfilling their potential is just that. It's illusion, because you have a spark of God inside you, which means your potential is infinite. You can't do that. But here specifically, I would say that I would give it one sociological, historical context and one narrative. Sociological, historical context, just say it like it is, as long as I'm offending people. Women were property in this period of history. So therefore, I think Avram, who had a more intimate relationship with his wife, knew that that's the way she would be treated.
right.
And tried to hide behind that to get out of a difficult situation. And on a deeper level, this is a deep test almost back to God. Saying, okay, God, this is the only way I see out of this situation. I'm going to put my wife in a situation which could end up with us not being able to be married any longer, and I'm going to trust that you will take care of it. Mm-hmm. And indeed, God does.
And also, you get a sense that the Ramban says that when Abraham kind of has to go down to Egypt because of a famine and loses his wife and all that, there's a premonition, a prelude to the Jewish people's having to go down because there's a famine in the land. And
Yeah, Maaseh Avot Siman Lebanim is what the Ramban says. That the actions of our forefathers are a sign for that which is coming for their children.
well, the second place that Abraham comes to is a place called, today we think it's probably a place called Baal Chatzor, which is between the Eye and Beit El. Notice people don't know this, but Avram does not go to Beit El. Avram never goes to Beit El. That's Yaakov's special place. But he goes close by. And then he goes to, once again, God says to him, walk this land.
Keep it moving.
And he shows up in Hebron. And he finds partners there. He finds men to make treaties with. And basically, Abraham is now sprouting roots in the land. He still doesn't have children. Meantime, we learned that Lot, his nephew, goes more after materialism. He gets the option after kind of there's a fight between the shepherds of Abraham, the shepherds of Lot. Lot gets the option to go wherever he kind of wants to, and he sees the green lushness of the Dead Sea Valley. It wasn't the Dead Sea back then. And he chooses that, even though the Torah says that it is known that the people of Sodom are wicked. And I'm guessing it's a kind of narrator's voice. The people of Sodom are wicked. But he goes down there, and then there's a war, which I never, ever managed to penetrate to understand. Every year I try to understand it better. It never totally works out for me. But there's a war. There's some kind of world war between
Four kings and the five kings.
4 kings and the 5 kings.
I mean, this is a great example of how the Torah, though it's not a history book, will use elements of history in order to deliver the narrative in a comprehensible fashion. First of all, the fact that we don't know about this world war doesn't mean that the people who received this particular text when it was given to them didn't. It's always important to remember that.
Right.
The other piece is that, from an archaeological standpoint, what you're seeing here is a hint at the fact that there was a constant battle between the empire based in Egypt and those empires based in the east, be it the Assyrian or much later the Babylonian, etc., for ascendancy, and that Canaan was their battleground. So you have these kings coming, this league of kings coming from Assyria in the east in order to defeat these 5 kings within Canaan who had rebelled against them and sworn allegiance to Egypt. And this is the beginning, in many ways, of Egypt's ascendancy over Canaan, which will ultimately lead to the context in which Joseph and the brothers and Yaakov will descend.
There's always a struggle over this land, if it belongs more to the north or to the south.
Yes.
We saw that also after Alexander passed away, right?
This land in the ancient world was between Egypt and Assyria. And then in sort of a later antiquity, in the Greek realm, it was between Ptolemaic and the Seleucid remnants of Alexander's time. Then it was between the Romans and the Parthians, right? Modern day Persia. And just look where we're sitting today. It's, and it's something that we've discussed before, actually, in the language of Bilam, and this notion that he calls Am Yisrael Am Levadad Yishkon, this nation that dwells alone, that if you were God, you wouldn't put the nation that dwells alone in Penn Station,
right?
Like at the crossroads of the ancient world,
right?
Unless it means something quite different. But you are correct that
maybe it means being a thorn, like a foreign thorn in the side of these empires, just like right there.
I think what it means is that we're a people that is meant to be bound up with the world, but hold our consciousness of mission and selfhood, despite all of the temptations and attractions of the other material and spiritual cultures around us. We have an inner aloneness, but we have a mission. And in order to perform that mission, we need to be in the middle of things. But in order to perform that mission, we have to be separate from it. And this is a great struggle we see in our beloved country today, right? Are we the 51st state, like some people like to say, not just politically, but materially and culturally? Or are we Am Yisrael? And what does that mean? There's a reason that Rav Kook says that we'll know that Geula is really coming when Jewish art and Jewish literature really begin to flower. It's not just a secondary element. It's our souls finding root in the land and giving articulation to who we really are.
I want to say something about that, Rabbi Mike, is that I feel that sometimes we have regressed from a more rooted, more Hebrew, more Israeli, more Middle Eastern sense that we had in the late 60s.
I think you're absolutely right.
I really feel like we're less able to speak with Arabs, less land-oriented, less walking in the land.
Yes.
And in my clear moments, I realize that we have lost sovereignty over parts of our land to the Philistine enemy.
We lost sovereignty because we lost our sense that we belong here, that this is our story.
Or
and
that
the physical
right.
and the physical manifestation is that the politics abhor a vacuum. There's no such thing as an empty land any longer on the world. If you retreat, someone else will advance.
Any case, Rav Soloveitchik says that Avram was not known until he went to war with those kings, the 4 kings.
He went to war with the 5. Gosh, now you confuse me.
Yeah. Which they're the ones that are coming out. Isn't it the 4 that are coming out against the 5 that are in land? I get confused. Any case,
yes, you are correct.
Right, so he goes against the 4. So
the 4 came from Assyria. Yes.
Right, so therefore what? Therefore he goes to war. He loads up his posse.
That's right.
And he goes to war to
girds his loins.
He girds his loins. Gird. By the way, gird, loin stands for Land of Israel Network. Okay, Land of Israel Network. Loin. Okay, so you have to
just keep going with that now.
We are in fact the people inside the Land of Israel Network are loin girders. Okay, we are so you sometimes have to gird. You have to gird.
I'll think about that.
Yeah. Okay. Don't be embarrassed about loins. Just it's the Land of Israel Network.
I'm not.
Okay. In any case, he girds his loins. He fights. He retrieves his nephew Lot.
And everybody else.
And Rav Soloveitchik says this is when Abraham becomes famous. People are like, ooh, this guy, just Jack Preacher. He's the real thing. This guy, amazing. Still though, doesn't have a son.
That's right.
Does not have a son, and at this point he says to God like, hey, I really appreciate all those promises you made. But and
the wealth is nice.
It's all great, lots of victories, and I believe in you. However, it seems a little bit improbable to me that I'm going to have. How about?
I'm pushing 90.
I'm pushing 90. How about Eliezer? He's the main servant of my house. He's the kind of in charge of all my stuff. He's going to inherit me. God says, no. He's going to come from your loins, from your seed. He's going to come out. And he takes him outside, says, count out all the stars. And he believed him. Still, though, God says to him, he says to God, maybe give me a sign. Maybe give me a sign. So God says, it's this week's parsha.
No. He doesn't ask for a sign on this.
What does he say?
He believed in God, and that was seen as a great righteousness. It's later when God promises him to inherit the land that he says, B'me'edah ki yirashena.
Right?
It's not on the promise of children. It's actually on the promise of inheriting the land that he asks for a son.
But those are related concepts, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
right?
Who's going to pop it? What does it mean to inherit a land if you don't have Hemshech Torah? You don't have the generations.
So when you ask God for a sign, God's like, oh, you want a sign? I got a sign for you. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to take 9 animals, okay, and I want you to split them nose to toe, and I want you to put them on like different sides facing one another, and I want you to
walk between
them. Now, I'll never forget that. I think I told you this last year. We learned about this at Yeshiva University, how in Ugaritic times, this was a way to sign a contract.
Yes.
You would split an animal and both walk between them. We're both part of this animal.
That's what it shows up in the book of Jeremiah as a given, that's what you do.
Can you imagine that?
Brit.
I guess that's pretty serious. You go to the bank, they're like, you want a loan? Sure. Cut up this animal, let's walk between
Benny, bring the cow.
That's right. It's
messy.
It's messy.
You'll never forget it.
Never forget it.
No one's going to deny that contract was made.
Right, and they mean business.
Yeah.
Right?
Just look what they did to the cow.
Right. So he cuts it. Very interesting verse in here. Fascinating verse. It says that the vulture came down upon these cut pieces, and Avram just shoos them away. Because, and it keeps going. And why is that? The verse is there to tell you sometimes there's going to be distractions. There's going to be a WhatsApp that's going to blink and beep. There's going to be an SMS.
Not on my phone.
Right, not on your phone, exactly. And my phone right now is on airplane mode. It's sleeping comfortably here in the corner because indeed there are distractions. You got to shoo them away. And God basically tells him, go ahead.
Well, you
I'm butchering it?
No, you're not butchering. No, you put your finger on what to me is one of the most important frames of Jewish history at all, and then you move past it too quick.
Go ahead.
I'm caught behind in this question when he says to him, "B'me'edah ki yirashena." How will I know that we'll inherit it? And then it seems like he's asking a simple question, and God gives him a sign. Except, what's God's real answer? Right. Oh, you're gonna know. Your children are going to be strangers in a land which is not theirs, and they will enslave them, and they will cause them to suffer. That's an answer. This is what leads some of our sages to say that all of the punishment of the descent into Egypt and the slavery there was because Avram asked for a sign.
Right.
Which is a fairly
Ouchie.
intense assertion. But there's a much deeper level to this. It comes down to the question is, what does it mean to know? What does it mean to know? He said, God told you that this will happen, Avram, or Avram at this point still. What more do you need to know? But in the same way, well, like you're pointing out, I bet we could speak to people right now. We'll reach out across the airwaves, so to speak, and ask how many of you listening right now know that you belong in the land of Israel. You know it. If I asked you, you'd say yes. But for whatever reason, perhaps many good reasons, you're not here. Because there's a knowing that begins in the head, which has a very weak influence on the hands and the feet. But there's a knowing which comes through a stripping away of everything which is secondary in life, which is what that word inui means. That's what happens in Egypt, right? Everything gets stripped away down to that final core. And when the knowing starts there, it's not what you know. It's not even what you do. It's who you are. Right? And so what God says is that I'll tell you how you will know, how you will have that intimate relationship with the land that will give you the continuity of generations. I'm going to send you away.
I'm going to kick you out, and strip you of everything.
Yes.
And you're going to be magnetized right back.
Exactly. And we have the great merit of living through that same process today. I mean, how many of our brothers and sisters here, when you ask them why they're here, they'll just look at you and say, well, where else would I be?
You know, and as you're saying this, I just want the folks that are listening to the show today to just be like, at least have a moment of full-on realization that you belong in the land of Israel.
Of letting yourself know.
Right. Like, and be like, where's my Lech Lecha? Where's my Lech Lecha? P.S. This Friday is the 7th of Cheshvan. It is the official Aliah Day of the state of Israel. Happens to be that yours truly had a big hand in writing that law, initiating that law, really. And also picking that date. I said in my original law that I wrote is that it should be connected to Parshat Lech Lecha, that it should be around Parshat Lech Lecha, and I have to tell you, Rabbi Mike, between me and you,
and everyone else listening,
right? Everybody else listening, my personal Aliyah date is the 7th of Cheshvan.
I'm aware we've spoken. I love it.
It's amazing.
I love it.
It's like a not normal thing, and it's here on Parshat Lech Lecha. By the way, speaking of a personal thing. Guess who makes a cameo appearance here in secret through the Rashi? It says the 4th generation will come back here, right? They're going to be kicked out of the land. The 4th generation will come back here. And then it says, V'chen haya, according to Rashi. And it was so. Yaakov yerad leMitzrayim. Yaakov went to Egypt. Tzevach shov dorotav. Calculate his generations. Yaakov to Yehuda. Yehuda to Peretz. Peretz to Chetzron. V'Kalev ben Chetzron miba'eh ha'aretz hayah.
It had to be Kalev.
That's right. Kalev makes his first appearance in the Torah, and it says, who is this that fulfills the promise of coming back as the 4th generation? It's Kalev ben Yefuneh.
And by the way, he's the one that knew, meaning Yehoshua had heard it all from Moshe.
Right.
He had it in his head. There was no question.
Right.
Kalev is the one that knew from his kishkas.
Right. That's what you're saying. Everything else was stripped.
Yeah. He knew exactly where he belonged.
And he knew exactly where to go to Hebron.
Yeah.
Too good. Any case, there's lots to talk about also about the incredible promise of the covenant between the parts and the 7 nations that will be conquered, the full list of 7 nations, including the Messianic times. Okay, am I saying that right? It says you will conquer the Canaanite, the Kenizzite, the Cadmonite, the Hittite, the Perizzite, the Rephaim. Wait. את הקני ואת הכניזי ואת הקדמוני, את החיטי ואת הפריזי ואת הרפאים, את האמורי והכנעני, הגרגשי והיבוסי. Of course, 7 plus 3. Right. 7 plus 3. The 3 others that are going to come in Messianic times. But this is the part I want to now go past that. And I want to talk about something else for a second now. The next part of the Torah portion is fascinating. We all know the Jewish story. Yitzhak, he's going to become the seed of Abraham. But let's talk about what happens in the next part of Torah portion, which is that Sarai wants to take an action to make sure that Abraham has seed and gives her handmaiden, right, Hagar to Abraham. And Abraham is going to come together with Hagar, and she's going to be impregnated, right? And she is going to, at that point, somehow make light of Sarah, somehow kind of, there's this power struggle where this
She says, hey, you guys have been married for decades, nothing happens. I went to him on my wedding night, and I'm pregnant.
Right.
Something wrong with you.
Right. And there's suddenly strife in the family. There's a pregnant, and she's like an Egyptian. She's a pregnant Egyptian. Sarai has been barren. Sarai is now angry at Avram. She says, God will judge between us. He says to her, do whatever you want with your handservant. She sends her away. Hagar is running away. She runs away, and she hangs out at the kind of well. And an angel of God, an angel of the Tetragrammaton, the 4-letter name, finds Hagar, and he says to her, where are you coming from? Where are you going? She says, I'm running away from Sarai. He says, return to your mistress and be subjugated under her hand. He says, because guess what? I'm going to make your seed very great. You are pregnant, and you're going to have a son, and his name is going to be Ishmael. And he's going to be a wild man, and his hand is going to be in everything, and everybody's hand is going to be in his. There's a thieving sense here.
Or at least conflict.
Conflict.
Yeah, kolbo.
Right?
Yeah,
Is it conflict? It's not exactly clear what it is, but his hand is in everything, and everybody's hand is in his business. And he's going to live with amongst all his brothers. But there's going to be a son named Ishmael. Later on, we learn he's going to have 12 princes coming out of him. He's going to be a great nation. Now, I work in Hebron. And I want to tell my Arab colleagues, friends, people I see in the street, happy birthday. This is it. Ishmael's born in this week's Torah portion.
That's true.
Ishmael's born in this week's Torah portion. Now, can we take a pause for a second, Rabbi Mike?
Go for it.
I've got a friend here with me, and his name is going to be, for the sake of this program, Muhammad, okay? And I can't use his real name. And he is a representative of our Ishmaelite cousins. So, Muhammad, I just want to say hi to you. Hi, welcome to the program today, and happy birthday to the Ishmaelites. How do you feel today?
Thank you very much. I feel very happy.
Well, now that you're learning this Torah portion with us, do you feel any kind of personal sense that that Ishmael, your forefather, the forefather of the Arab nation, was born in this week's Torah portion, that it's in the Torah, that it's in God's Word? How does that make you feel?
It's very wonderful and very useful to hear this story from Rabbi. And sure, Ismail is a dear brother to Yitzhak. And all of us have to be brothers and one family. No reason to be enemies.
But there is tension. There is tension already here. We're going to learn about tension between it's sublimated. It's not going to be very big.
There's no family without tension.
Right, it's no family without tension.
Well, because when you have tension between acquaintances and friends, you know what you do? You walk away.
Right.
Family is a binding nature, so that it has a vessel for tension, and tension in life is good as long as it's worked through productively.
I think Muhammad would tell us, and I'll let you say it by yourself, Muhammad. Today, Ishmael's a little bit not in a good place. Ishmael is not so healthy today.
Yes, it's not healthy. Too many crises, too many problems in the Arab world because of the selfishness, unfortunately, in the Arab nations, and they refuse to live peacefully with the Jewish people in the Middle East. We see many terrorism in Iraq, in Syria, in Yemen. We have a clear enemy in Tehran, Iran. Unfortunately, the Arab nation don't want to solve this problem. And for example, if they want to solve this problem, they have to make a real normalization with the Jewish nation here in the Middle East, in the land of Israel. And this will be a clear clue that they want to live peacefully with each other. When they accept the Jewish presence here in the Middle East, I think it will be okay. And they will live peacefully with each other. There will be no problem between Syria and Lebanon, Syria and Iraq. There will be no problem between Yemen and Saudi Arabia. As we see these days, there is a war, maybe since 3 years. All of this because of the Arabic nationalism and the Arabic refusal to accept the Jewish nation presence here in this holy land.
And isn't that weird? Because we learned that we're really the children of Abraham. Interestingly, where I get to work, which is the cave of the Machpelah, the tomb of the founding fathers and mothers, the one thing that we can come together on is Abraham. Abraham, the father of the Ishmaelites, father of Ishmael, the father of Yitzhak.
Sure.
The Torah tells us how they bury Abraham together. And you would think that this would be a place of beginnings of
Sure, it's a normal relationship. Why should we have to be enemies? If we pray for the same God, for the same creature of us, what's the reason to be enemies? I don't understand how they refuse to accept member Knesset Yehuda Glick to enter in the Temple Mount just to bless his son before 2 days. It's unbelievable. This man is going to pray for God in a very holy place. So it's a madness when we are talking about refusal to accept someone who is a good believer in Hashem, in God, in Allah, to pray for God in one place.
But we have also spoken between you and I that there's a tremendous jealousy that exists today in the Ishmaelite world towards the children of Israel.
Yes. This jealousy and this hatred depend on two things: the religious traditions from, unfortunately, the Holy Quran, and the radical school in the Islamic traditions. And the second thing, believing in the Arab nationalism. It's a clear kind of racism to believe only in Arabs. For example, we see what happened now in Kurdistan. The Arab world refused Kurdistan to be a free country. Why? Because they believe only, even Kurds are Muslims, and maybe the minority are Jews or Christians, but they refuse the independence for Kurdistan because they believe that any other people, like other Arabs, are enemies. So it's a kind of racism, a clear racism. Here, we feel the same thing in Hebron, in Jerusalem, when Arabs refuse to live peacefully with the Jewish people, with the Israeli people. So we need a religious leader, a political leader in the Arabic side, in the Palestinian side, to change this situation.
Mohammed, thank you so much for being with us today here on the program, the Yishai Fleischer Show. It's great to have you. How much time do we have, Mike? Not so much. What do we have? 5 minutes?
We can do 5.
So, okay, let's go for 4. It was great to have Mohammed here.
No,
right?
absolutely.
It's an
No
amazing
complaints.
thing, and I really want to hug the Arabs in Hebron and say to them, "Hey, man, it's your parsha, it's your parsha," but they don't really know it's their Torah portion. Any case, speaking of the Arabs and the Jews, this Torah portion finishes off with God says to Avram, "Walk before me and be simple, be whole, and therefore I need you to circumcise yourself and all the men, children in your family." And that's the way you're going to be whole, is by actually
Removing part of yourself.
right. By the way, I was reading about that. The only part of yourself that you can remove and still be whole. There's no other part in the body that has this kind of, like, you can't remove something.
Covering.
Right.
Right. No, I mean, this obviously is a long and rich topic, but it fits the theme with which we began, which is that call to Avram to move away from what was, to cut away, so to speak, his old life, which stood between him and the ability to enter into a new level of relationship with God. And here God is telling him, Lech Lecha, go before me and you will be, whole is one translation, right? Pure, complete. The key is that there is no static completion for a human being. That the role that we play in creation is to always take one step forward more, with one eye, so to speak, on what God wills and one eye toward what we dream of. And so it was given over to Abraham to actually take a hand in completing his own creation. God said, I left you incomplete.
Wow.
I left humanity. I left creation incomplete. And now I'm going to tell you the secret, that the way to complete creation is to remove the barrier between you and I. And that, as long as you go before me, not follow behind me and
Right.
just listen to what I told you to do yesterday, but walk before me and sort of light the way for God in the world, that will be what I intend for creation.
With Noach, we learned that it said, Bo'el HaTeva, come inside into the seed.
And hu hitalach et Hashem,
Right,
et Elohim.
Right, he walked with God.
Right.
God
God
says
held
to
his
Abraham,
hand next to him.
Right, God says to Avram, and soon Avram, he says to him, walk before me, perfect
right.
yourself, take those steps. I want you to get out there and light the world, like you said. And at the end, Avram is very excited about having Ishmael, but God says, after I've changed your name, now I want you to know you're going to have a son. His name is Yitzhak, and he's going to be the true continuation of your path. That's what it says. I've heard you about Ishmael. I'm going to give him 12 princes are going to issue forth from him. And on that day, Avraham, and he gets a name. Avraham gets the H of Avraham, the Hey.
Becomes the father of many nations, as
That's
you point
right,
out.
father of many nations, and there's a universalism in Avraham's actions.
Absolutely.
And Sarai becomes Sarah. Yud pops off. The Yud pops off.
But it's not going away.
Right, it's going to land somewhere. We'll learn about that later. We've learned about it. We'll learn about it later. And that day, Avram circumcises his son Ishmael, and as he's 13 years old.
And himself at age 90.
And age 90, that's right. And the Midrash, Pirkei the Rabbi Eliezer says that where he circumcised himself, that was on the Temple Mount, and when the first drop hit the ground, God said, "That's where I want a mizbeach. That's where I want the tabernacle to be." So, in this very day, Avram circumcised himself, his son Ishmael, and all of his servants and all of the stuff, and he's entered into a new covenant. He's a new man. He's walked the land. He's got a lot of experience, but now he's got a new name. He already has kind of one son behind him, and he's got yet another son on the way, which is going to be a great story.
And the parsha ends in laughter. I mean, not quite yet, but that name of Yitzhak, right? This sort of like power of laughter to hold that which is completely incomprehensible is going to really be the bridge to the next phase of Abraham's life. Now that he's shown God that he can step out of what was and become something new, God's going to show him that there's far more ahead of him than that.
What an amazing name Yitzhak is.
It is.
And Abraham laughed.
Yeah.
And Abraham laughed and Sarah laughed, and God said, call him Yitzhak.
Yeah.
And it's like Ishmael is like, God will hear, God has heard. And Yitzhak, like, he'll laugh. And I guess he laughs last. All right, folks, Rabbi Mike Feuer, I want to thank you so much for joining me today.
Always a pleasure.
Muhammad, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you very much.
And I do want to thank, and I should have done this earlier, I do want to thank our great sponsors. First thing, I want to thank my good friends, the Michel family from Switzerland, who helps out so much. I want to thank Fred, who's coming in visiting Israel soon, for helping the show so much. Thank you. Visit YishaiFleischer.com. Donate. Be part of the story. You're amazing. We're spreading Torah to the world. I want to thank the good people at Tchelet, Tekhelet, for providing the most incredible service, which is returning the Jewish people to their true colors, their national colors, by returning the ancient snail blue dye to our lives. As you said, Rabbi Mike.
True blue Jew.
True blue Jew. That's right, true blue Jew. The Tchelet revolution has begun, and you're a part of it. So go to Tchelet, let them know that you came through me, and maybe they'll make you a deal. But more than anything, just be part of this great story wherever you are.
Fly the colors.
Fly the colors, man. That's exactly what it really is like that. Fly the colors. Fly the real colors, though. It's like and something. It's got a sacrifice in it. The good folks at J-Brick, right, who make great Lego sets, including the most modern of Israeli weaponry in the hand of a tiny little Lego figurine female soldier. Great stuff. I want to get a lot of those and spread them amongst those brothers in black protesters, the Haredim. I'm like, look at this little figurine, female soldier with a gun. Isn't that cool? Try that. So that's jbrick.com. Our good friends at the Land of Israel Network, who make this show possible, the home of the land of this show and many other great shows, including your show, The Jewish Story.
Check it out.
Check it out at the Land of Israel Network, thelandofisrael.com. And you're found at Rav Mike at thelandofisrael.com, and also facebook.com/Rav Mike. I'm facebook.com/Yishai Fleischer. I also want to thank the good people at janglo.net. Our friend Zev, a brilliant guy doing great things by making it more possible for Jews to do Jewish in the land of the Jews. I stole that from Hillel, Remember that old line from Hillel? Jews doing Jewish things with other Jews?
Yeah.
I like that line. So that's what Janglo is doing, but helping you make it happen here in the land of Israel. And I also want to, of course, thank my sponsor, which is Hebron the Jewish community of. Come visit us. Come to the Hebron Fund website and come on a tour and connect to the mothers and the fathers of the Jewish people. Come see Abraham and do a Lech Lecha. Last thing I want to say to you, Rabbi Mike, this is a dream of mine and Malka's, which is we want to turn to the Shorish sandal people or the Naot sandal people and create a set of sandals called the Lech Lechas. And imagine that on the bottom, it would have a shape of the words Lech and Lecha wherever you walk in the land of Israel.
You just leave those footprints
Leave those
you.
footprints, right? Does that sound cool? You got a Lech Lecha. And I'm very excited to be going to Alon Mored this Shabbat next to Shechem, Nablus. And that is, of course, the tomb of Joseph, and where both Abraham and later Jacob are going to come to for the first time to the land of Israel. Rabbi Mike Feuer, thanks so much. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
All right, Muhammad, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Okay, folks, don't forget to Lech Lecha. Come to yourself, come to this land, and be part of this great story. Shabbat Shalom, and God bless you. And be chazak. Shalom.